In the frozen hell of the Western Front, where mud became a living enemy and death lurked in every shadow, survival often hinged on the smallest things. Imagine standing waist-deep in icy water, your boots rotting on your feet, the air thick with the stench of decay and cordite. In your pocket, wrapped carefully in oilcloth, sits a bar of soap no bigger than your palm. To the uninitiated, it's just soap. To the soldier who understands the brutal calculus of trench warfare, it's the difference between living through another week or succumbing to the invisible killers that claim more lives than bullets ever could. This is the story of how one of humanity's oldest inventions became a soldier's secret weapon against the trenches themselves. The trenches of World War I were breeding grounds for death in forms far more insidious than enemy fire. Trench foot ravaged entire battalions, turning healthy flesh into blackened, gangrenous masses that required amputation or worse. The condition began innocently enough: prolonged exposure to cold, wet conditions that broke down skin tissue at the cellular level. Without proper hygiene, what started as numbness and tingling escalated to open sores that invited infection. Medical officers quickly realized that soldiers who maintained even basic washing routines with soap and managed to dry their feet had dramatically lower rates of trench foot. The act of washing removed the bacteria-laden mud that clung to skin like a death sentence, while the mechanical action of scrubbing restored circulation to numbed extremities. Soap became so crucial to preventing trench foot that commanders made foot inspections mandatory, and soldiers who neglected their hygiene faced disciplinary action. In the Canadian Corps, officers implemented a rotation system where men were pulled from the front line specifically to wash and dry their feet, a practice that reduced trench foot casualties by over 60%. Beyond trench foot lurked an enemy even more persistent, the body louse. These tiny parasites infested every soldier, living in the seams of uniforms and feeding constantly on human blood. The itching was maddening, but the real danger lay in what the lice carried: typhus fever, a disease that could sweep through a battalion like wildfire. Soap, offered the only practical defense. Soldiers developed these, elaborate delousing rituals, heating water over small fires in the reserve trenches and scrubbing their bodies and clothes with harsh, carbolic-laden soap. It burned the skin, but crucially it killed the parasites. The French, for their part, distributed a particularly potent soap made with cresol. Soldiers nicknamed it liquid fire for how it felt on open wounds, but they used it anyway because, honestly, the alternative was just worse. British soldiers discovered that running the seams of their uniforms over candle flames would pop the lice eggs with these satisfying crackles. But without soap to wash away the dead parasites and their waste, reinfection was, immediate. The German army, on the other hand, issued a special delousing soap called Lausisafe, recognizing that maintaining a fighting force required fighting battles on multiple fronts, including, yes, the microscopic one. In an era before antibiotics, even minor wounds could, unfortunately, prove fatal if infection set in. The soil of Flanders was particularly deadly, contaminated with decades of agricultural fertilizer and now saturated with the decomposing bodies of men and horses. Gas gangrene thrived in this environment, a rapidly spreading infection that released gases into tissue and killed within days if left untreated. Field medics and soldiers alike understood that, The first line of defense was immediate and thorough cleaning of any wound, no matter how small. Soap and clean water, when available, became the first and sometimes only treatment a wounded man received before evacuation. Soldiers carried small pieces of soap in their first aid kits, wrapped in waxed paper to keep them dry, knowing that a shrapnel wound properly cleaned in the first hour had a fighting chance, while one left dirty almost certainly meant amputation or death. The practice of wound irrigation with soapy water, though primitive by modern standards, saved countless lives. By mechanically removing the contaminated soil and debris that carried the deadliest bacteria. The trenches taught lessons that resonate powerfully for modern preppers and survivalists. In any extended survival situation, hygiene isn't a luxury, it's a tactical necessity that directly impacts your ability to continue functioning. The soldiers of World War I understood that survival requires fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously, against the environment, against disease, and against the psychological weight of sustained hardship. A bar of soap weighs almost nothing, costs almost nothing, and occupies minimal space in any pack, yet its value in a prolonged crisis situation is, well, immeasurable. Today's survivalist would do well to remember that the most sophisticated gear in the world means nothing if you can't maintain the basic hygiene necessary to keep your body operational. You know, the soldiers who survived the trenches weren't always the strongest or the best armed. They were the ones who paid attention to the small things, who understood that surviving isn't about one dramatic moment, but about 1,000 small, disciplined decisions made day after day. If this glimpse into the ingenious survival methods of history's toughest warriors has sparked your curiosity, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the Fieldcraft Chronicles community. Share this video with fellow history enthusiasts and survivalists who understand that the lessons of the past aren't just stories. They're survival manuals written in blood and mud, just waiting to teach us how to endure whatever challenges we might face. The past has much to teach those willing to listen,